Okay, perfect. And it looks like we do have a couple of people on here. So I will go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to share my screen. So for those of you online here, this is a virtual debrief of the short-term rentals community engagement project. So this is intended to be an information session. I'm Grace Johnson, I'm the communications coordinator, and Rob Feltz is also on this call. He's the assistant to the city manager, and together we are the project team for short-term rentals. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So for those of you who just popped on here, if you don't know, we have been working on community engagement around short-term rentals for quite some time now. The bulk of the work has been over the past month, so in June and July. And what we're going to do today is go through some updates since we kind of started this project. We're going to go through the final community engagement report and then the staff recommendations to council as well. And Rob, is my PowerPoint showing up correctly? Okay. 1 second.
Stop.
Okay, sorry, technical issues. It looks like we're we're good now. So we are going to go through the community engagement report and then the staff recommendations to council and what's next. So really quick, just want to go through this timeline again. So we kind of kicked this off in June with the platform What's Up Woodland Park. We launched this project. We went through an online questionnaire and some community conversations on July 6th, which were in-person events. And then we actually ended up leaving the questionnaires open until July 14th. And then last week on July 21st, we had a joint work session with the Planning Commission and City Council. So I want to talk about the moratorium. So and by the way, we will take Q&A today. If you have Q&A, there is a function to submit questions, and Rob's gonna just look at those and we'll answer those questions at the end. But the moratorium, so the moratorium went into effect on July 7th. And we've gotten a lot of questions about this. There were quite a few people that attended the in-person community engagement, and they were concerned with, you know, why is council making decisions without hearing the community engagement report, without taking into consideration those folks that did show up. So this community engagement project was always intended to inform any final decisions. So, you know, we weren't sure, and I say we as staff, what would happen with the moratorium, if that would go through, when council would introduce it, etc. But this community engagement piece was always intended to inform a final decision, any permanent action from council. What the moratorium is it went into effect August 18th, or that's a typo, it went into effect July 18th. and it will go through October 14th. So it's a temporary moratorium, and what it does is it suspends any new licenses from being issued that are specifically for short-term rentals. So anyone that would come in to apply for a business license for an STR would be denied that through October 14th. What can happen is if any permanent decisions are made prior to that, obviously this moratorium could go away. It also, it could just expire. So those are two things that could happen. What it doesn't do is it does not impact any current STR owners. So anyone that has a STR business license currently is not impacted by the moratorium. So the community engagement report was compiled and it was presented at the work session last week. And that can be found under important links on whatsupwoodlandpark.com. Also, you can find the recording of that work session under important links. So those are both on that page. I'm going to really quickly go through that community engagement report. If you missed it at the work session, this will be, it was, you know, we had a 2-hour work session on this, so it was a pretty lengthy presentation, but I'm going to just go through some major points here. So share this screen. So just some highlights here. This is a very large document. So what we did was we kind of have some introduction, some high level information, key findings here in the first few pages. And then all the appendices are actually full reports. So you can read all of the questionnaire responses. They're all anonymized. You can also read the report from the community conversations. So staff facilitators actually did report on their specific groups that they facilitated. So all of that information is at the end of this document as well. So like I said, the goal of this community engagement plan was to get feedback from the community that would inform a staff recommendation to council. So we set out to hear from as many people as we could, what their concerns were, if any, you know, what really are the concerns of the community, what are the benefits of STRs, what are the impacts, what are the existing procedures and how can they be improved, if at all. So we just kind of wanted to understand the community sentiment on the topic, so that we could make a responsible recommendation to city council with the whole community in mind. So in total, we had 340 responses to the questionnaire, and that's unique resident responses. So there wasn't, we required people to register for the platform so they couldn't respond multiple times to the questionnaire. We had 295 people register for the platform, which is great. And I do want to say to the people on this call, and this was a really good process for us, and it was extremely helpful to hear all of your feedback, and it was extremely encouraging that so many people got involved and shared their perspectives with us. And so we really appreciate that, and we hope to do more of this sort of outreach in the future for other projects. So just keep that in mind. If you are registered on the platform, you will get emailed updates on this project and any future projects that we're looking for public input on. So the three major components with this were the stakeholder interviews. So those were one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders. So that was short-term rental owners, you know, hotel owners, managers, residents, real estate agents, Chamber of Commerce, a lot of different people that we had one-on-one conversations with. And then we had that questionnaire. And then we also had the community conversations. So those were 2 events, and we had a total of 56 people participate in those. And I'm not going to go too into this, but what we did, if you took the questionnaire, you know, there were 2 questions at the beginning that were open response type questions. The first one was what concerns you have, if any, with short-term rentals. And the second was what benefits are there, if any, of short-term rentals. So we were trying to get both sides of this, and we left it open to response so that people could truly tell us what they feel without it being contained to yes or no questions. So in order to make those responses easier to consume, not only for the public at the end of this, but also for council, we went in and we read every single response and tagged and categorized it based on content. So what you're seeing here is the amount of tags. So there's on the second page after each of these questions is explanation of those categories. So, you know, for example, noise, partying, traffic, parking, those were nuisance type concerns. So that's how we tagged them. And the same thing for the benefits. So these were the top benefits mentioned by category, and then explanation of those tags of those categories, so to speak. And then we did do a quick summary of the community conversations on here as well. But I would encourage you to go to the website, look through this document. There was a lot of different perspectives on this, and it really shows in this how this is such a nuanced topic, and it's very interesting to hear from all of you your unique perspectives on this. So with that, Rob and I worked on this, and we developed recommendations. So at the joint work session, we did a presentation to, and I will stop sharing this screen. We did a presentation of this community engagement report, and then Rob got into his presentation on the recommendations and some options that other cities have done, and some recommendations that we thought would work for this community based on what we were hearing. And again, this is on whatsupwoldmanpark.com. So, so the staff recommendation can be found under important links as well. And I will let Rob take over this part explaining what this is, but essentially we gave them a menu of options. So this is by no means a final ordinance or anything like that, but these were some options that we gave them that we thought would make sense, that could potentially work. And what they asked is that our city attorney, Nina Williams, would draft some sort of ordinance from this. So a rough draft ordinance, and then they could have something to deliberate. So they would be able to kind of pick this apart and decide what makes sense, what doesn't, and go from there. So I will let Rob explain a couple of these things. And Rob, is my screen sharing correctly?
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so like Grace said, these are just some of the things that taking into the concerns that we got from the community, and then coming up with some ideas of, hey, these are things that other communities are doing, presented that to council, and this is kind of what we're working on. Like Grace said, this is not the ordinance, this is not the rules, it's just what they're talking about. So the first thing was updating the city code, and as a lot of you guys are aware, like, you know, our city code and STRs are a little bit different in age. So STRs are kind of a new thing, and it's not really addressed in our city code. So the city code doesn't specifically address STRs. So our recommendation is to update the code to put STRs in there, go to the usage tables, like what is allowed in each zone, and put in there like where STRs are or not allowed, or where they're allowed in a limited at a limited amount, whatever they come up with, it needs to be addressed in the code. The next thing is separating STR licenses from business license. So right now, if you applied for a business license or for an STR license, it's the same thing. So there's a lot of information that we need to track STRs that's not included in a business license. So creating a new license would allow us to gather that information, and then it would allow, like right now, a business license is approved by finance. So if we separate it, then that business license can be approved by finance, and then it'll go to the planning department or code enforcement, whatever. And then everybody kind of gets a better look at it. They can label it, say, hey, this is in this zone. Because right now, like to answer the question of how many, what percentage of urban residential are being used as STRs, it's really difficult for me to know that without going into the county's website and entering every single address individually. So by doing it this way, we can capture that information right up front, and I can report that information clearly and timely. Another thing that gets asked is how many of the STRs in Woodland Park are owner occupied versus non owner occupied. That's another thing that's very difficult. So it would just clarify the information that we bring in, and it would allow us to keep council and the public more aware about exactly what's going on. The next thing is a cap on STR licenses, potentially by zone. And then the recommendation was in there to exempt all current licensed STRs. So in the way that would work, right now in the city, we're at about 7%. So there's a couple different numbers, but if you look at where we're at in the city, completely built out. So right now with the water that we have available, the water taps, the space, and the zoning, we would be tapped out at 3,478 residential units. So right now at 188 STRs, that's 5.4%. So currently we have 2,478 residential units. So at 188 STRs, that's 7.6%. So by setting a cap, and I can throw out an arbitrary number right now at 5%. So they set the cap at 5%. We're already at 7.6. Those would just remain until like these licenses wouldn't be transferable. So once a property was sold, the license would go away, or if somebody for whatever reason didn't own it, or they just wanted to stop running the business, the license would go away, and eventually that would drop down to 5%. And once it dropped below 5%, then there would be some mechanism for issuing, another set number of licenses to bring us back up to 5%. So the next thing is prohibiting subleasing for STRs. That's just saying, hey, you can't rent property from one person and then lease it out as an STR for someone else. Another thing is requiring off-street parking, and that would be based on, if you advertise that you can bring 2 cars, then you have to provide parking for those cars off the street. And then occupancy limits based on bedroom space. One of the more popular methods right now for that is 2 per bedroom plus 2. So having a requirement for a 24-hour contact, so someone local that can be that can respond within 24 hours. And then self-attested inspections. Like it would be a pretty big strain on the city to say, hey, we need to make sure that all of these buildings being used for STRs are up to the proper fire codes, and they have their parking, they have all this. So what we would ask is that you come and you attest, like you sign basically a document saying, hey, I've checked, we have fire extinguishers, we have fire monitors or fire alarms, all this stuff. We have the parking. And then maybe the code enforcement officer goes out and spot checks those things throughout the year. But it would be really on the owner to do the work. Good neighbor guidelines seem very popular across both sections of STR owners and residents. And this would just kind of like taking a lot of things that STR owners already do and just kind of making it the rule. It's like, hey, now you have to do these things. Just to kind of create a balance between those that do and those that don't. And then collaborating with homeowners associations and coming to communities. So it's not the city's part to enforce HOA laws or covenants. So, but it would be just, hey, we'll let you know. Like, I don't know, provide them a list if they want it every month or whatever. It's like, these are the short-term rentals we have. If there's one in your neighborhood and you want to address it, then it's up to you to address. And that's all we have for the recommendations. And so we're going back in August. So the last council meeting in August, which I believe is the 18th. Sorry.
Yeah, so there will be planning on, I will say, a work session on August 18th at 5 p.m. prior to the council meeting to talk about this again. So what happened at the last one was they looked at this and they said, okay, you know, some of this stuff we like, some of it we don't, but go ahead and draft an ordinance to include these things and bring it back to us so that we have something to talk about and something to deliberate. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. So on the 18th, they will get a first look at that draft ordinance. And this is a work session, again, with Planning Commission and City Council. No official like regulation or ordinances would be passed at that point. Like there wouldn't be a vote, but they could essentially say, okay, we like this, we like parts of it, revise this, and then bring it back to us at a city council meeting. They also could say, actually, we don't like any of this, start over. So it completely depends on what happens at that work session. And again, these were just recommendations. So this isn't word for word what could pass. It's really hard to say, but that's what they'll be talking about at that next work session. That'll be available. You can come in person or via Zoom to that as well. And moving forward, we will keep, you know, if you're registered on What's Up Woodland Park, you get the emails with updates. So we will keep you updated if anything changes. And what happens at the joint work session, we'll let you know. But again, those are always on the city website. You just scroll down to the calendar, you can find a Zoom link to join that meeting, or you can just show up in person. But that's the update as of right now. Rob, do we have any questions in the chat?
So yeah, I did get just give me just a second. But with that, if you want to come to those work sessions, like usually there's no public comment in a work session. It's up to the mayor whether or not they take public comment. But as these go to city council and the planning commission, there will be public comment available.
Yeah.
There.
And, you know, of course, you can still, you can always contact one of us if you have specific questions, concerns, etc. You can also always contact your city council members. So if you have something specific that you want them to know prior to the work session, you can always email them. That's always an option. So and then Rob and I's contact info is here as well, and we're always happy to talk about this.
So we have a question about what does a cap on STR licenses accomplish?
Okay.
So with that, it's like we said, it's recommended that they do it by zone. So, you know, like some smaller towns, like I think it's Fair Play, like they're running out of commercial zone area, like so their storefronts. So they're limiting them there completely because they don't want their storefronts to get gone for short-term rentals. So, and then here, you know, it's like multifamily homes that's your most attainable housing for the most part in the city. So if we wanted to limit the number that went into there, so it provides more attainable housing for the community, then they could limit there. If they're more concerned about, hey, we're really losing that neighborhood feel inside of our communities, then they can limit them in residential zones. So it just, instead of saying, hey, we're going to give 50 STR licenses throughout the city, it enables them to put them where they want and are kind of focused where they think it's best for the community. And then and also as our if it's based on our current build, then as our city grows, that number will grow. So, you know, right now it would be like 75. So at 3%. So if there was a 3% limit, that means we would go down to 75 STRs. But as we created more dwelling units in the city, then that number would increase. And if that doesn't answer your question, I'm sorry, but you're welcome to give me a call and email me anytime.
Thanks, Rob.
Next question.
Okay. So once you update the ordinance, what is your thought about having a self-regulatory organization to assist with enforcement training and communication to all interested parties? So this is something that we actually heard at some of the community conversations, and actually in some of the the questionnaire responses. I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, Rob, you've done more research on this than me, but in regards to like enforcement, training, communication, all of those things, it depends on what the ordinance consists of, I guess, like what it actually ends up being and what kind of enforcement it would require. But I kind of foresee this as something that we may go back to the community, you know, like once an ordinance passes, like, you know, coming back to you all and saying, okay, this is what we ended up with. How do you think it's best to handle enforcement, training, communicate? You know, what is the best way for us to do these things? And Rob, I'll let you answer that too. But
so yeah, the SROs are the self-regulatory organizations, something that was talked about quite a bit. It's just right now, like maybe as our tourism inside the city, those departments, as they grow out, they could be connected, because short-term rentals have a lot there with the tourism. But right now we just don't have the bandwidth for it. And then, but you know, like potentially if there is like, you know, right now we have Keep Woodland Park Beautiful, the Planning Commission, like all these different boards and commissions. But so if there's ever a tourism committee, that could maybe be a seat on that tourism committee to start talking about those things. And I think it's a great idea to kind of let the industry regulate itself. I think would be a very good thing for the community. And yeah, I think Grace covered everything else with enforcement. Oh, another thing on that was training, and that's been brought up too. Like a lot of STR owners are of the thought that, hey, if you actually like explain to people like how involved this industry is, it would eliminate people that are just like, oh, this is super simple, I'm going to jump in and rent out my house. But just explaining that, you know, they put a lot of work into doing this right. But okay.
It looks like that's all the questions we have. Again, for anyone online here, you can always reach out to Rob or myself, and also, of course, your council members. All of that, the council contact information is on the city website. So, and then this webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube as well. So if you missed any of it, it's available there. But again, thank you so much for participating in this. It's extremely helpful for us to have a community perspective on this topic, and we look forward to doing more of this community engagement work in the future and hearing more from you all. So
Grace, one last thing. On that, the last comment, there's nothing saying that a group of STR owners can't get together and work with each other and you know, come to city council as a voice, or and that's, I mean, I think that would be a great idea to just, you know, one of you represent as the speaker, or all of you come together, however you wanted to do it. But that's something that you could definitely do.
Definitely. Okay, well, great. And again, if there's any other questions, let us know. We're always here, and have a good day.